From Panic to Preparedness, Averting Ransomware Disasters with Eric Krohn.
We're going to talk a little bit about ransomware here. This is a brand new presentation for me. I had a lot of fun doing this. It's been a while since I've been to a conference like this that's been so much fun, right? With the whole Goots thing going on and all that. I tried to embrace that, so hopefully you'll laugh along with me while learning some things. I try to keep it a little bit light because this is sort of a dark issue. How many of you have dealt with ransomware attacks with you or your customers, right? Yeah, this is not a fun thing, okay? It stinks. So we'll try to have a little bit of fun with it. But this is me with a shorter beard and trying to look pretty because my boss said it was getting too long. She'll do that again sometime soon, but yeah, impressive. Anyway, I've been in IT and security for years. Got into it back in the 1990s, if that helps you. My first network was Windows 3.1 and Lantastic, if anyone remembers that. And I did frontline support for Windows 95 for Microsoft. So I'm like that old, okay? I've seen a lot of things, done a lot of things. I've worked in manufacturing, worked in all kinds of places. I actually was a technical services manager at a VAR for a while, which we did VAR stuff, but we also did MSP stuff and all of that stuff back in the day. And then I worked for about 10 years for the US Army, where I ended up the security manager for the 2nd Regional Cyber Center. And we managed the network infrastructure across all of North America for all the post camps and stations for the Army. And I helped deploy the Army's Active Directory as well. I was a domain admin there and a deployer of stuff. So I've been in security for a while, and now I work for KnowBe4. This isn't a pitch, but I work for KnowBe4, and I get to go around and kind of share my experience. So I love it. Hopefully this turns out to be worth your time. We're going to talk about what makes it so popular, the attack vectors, and the most important part, I think, is some of the defenses against that. And this is where I really hope you guys will learn a couple of things and get some ideas, because it can be brutal and it can go wrong. Now, it is reassuring that I saw a lot of hands up that you've dealt with this before, because sometimes I get audiences that, man, they have no idea what they're getting into. So anyway, what makes ransomware so popular? We hear about it all the time, although we're hearing about it in the news a little bit less these days. And I'll say this, I've been covering ransomware for, gosh, probably the last 9 years or so. I've been dealing with it. As a matter of fact, I was a presenter at a conference in Detroit about ransomware on the day WannaCry hit. Okay, so that was a very interesting session. We basically threw the slides out, and myself and a bunch of other people were like, okay, this is what we know, this is what we're seeing, this is what's happening. It was a conference called Converge, and it was kind of interesting when all that rolled out. But the fact is, believe it or not, it's money. They're making a few bucks here. Now, you'll see some numbers up here that are impressive, like this one here, okay, up to $2.73 million for the average ransom payment. That's huge. Now, speaking of WannaCry, the most WannaCry ever demanded for a per machine ransom was $600, but most of the time it was $300. So I like to think of those as the good old days. Right? How many of you would quickly write a check for $300 a box, right? You're like, yeah, cool, I'll get that Windows server back for $300. Got some fixing to do, but come on, man. That's not happening anymore. And what's interesting, though, is when you look at a couple of these things together, right? Average payment up to 2.73, 27% year-over-year decline in the number of payments being made. So what that means is there are less people making payments, but higher payment amounts. Now, if you think about that, what that also means is these ransomware actors, they've got a lot of money, right? They've got funding, they've got resources. And that's where things have started to get pretty ugly too. It's also too easy. Ransomware is a service, and all the crime as a service things that are going on these days are making this extremely easy. It used to be that you had to know what you were doing when you got into this stuff and actually started running attacks. Now, all you need to do is have a poor set of morals and moral compass, and there is phishing as a service that will set everything up for you. Send a bunch of emails, send a bunch of attacks through those services, whether it's SMS or whatever you need to do. And very soon, you can hear it now first, I expect we'll be seeing voice phishing or vishing as a service too. As AI continues to improve and the tools behind it, I think we're going to start seeing more and more voice calls. So, one of the interesting things about ransomware as a service is the way it works is you have your affiliates, they do all the hard work, the developers do the easy stuff. They do the coding, keep the infrastructure in place. Most of the time they deal with payments. But what this does that not a lot of people think about is the affiliate groups are different groups with different attack techniques. And it makes it a little bit tougher because you hear about one of these groups that hits somebody, they may have a different technique than other ones. It's the same ransomware strain, but because there's different affiliates, they do things a little bit differently. So it makes it a little bit harder to defend against because you have different people doing different things. So that makes it a little bit tougher there. It's interesting to see how this has grown over the years. RAS, okay? Ransomware as a service, like I said. And I thought I was clever here. It's a raspberry beret, right? Come on, it was funny. It was funny. God, it's late in the day. I appreciate you taking pictures of that slide because it is funny, all right? No, but most of them work on this RAS model now. The risk to developers is very low. You never hear about those folks getting busted. And I always think of like the drug gangs, you know, where it's the street thugs that get busted on occasion, but it's never the kingpins. Same sort of thing happens in the ransomware world. The profit sharing structure on this usually runs between 70-30 or 80-20, and that's the split of the ransom for the affiliate and then the developer. So the affiliates, the people running the attacks, get about 70 to 80%, and the developers get 20 to 30% of the profits. Now, when you start looking at things like 2.7 million per shot, you see how motivated everybody is to get working on this game. Now, here's a chart that's horribly ugly, but it is there. Average ransom payment. 63% of ransom demands were over $1 million, 30% were over $5 million, and 100% of people hit by ransomware weren't happy about it. Okay? That's my source, me. I said that. Okay? I did try to include sources for everything here, and I can get you slides if you want afterwards. Feel free to reach out to me. But yeah, it's pretty brutal. Now, some of the major groups that are out there these days we've probably heard of, right? Ransom Hub, Lockbit, Akira, and Scattered Spider. So let's look at these a little bit. I didn't get a chance to make pictures for these. Did you know nobody has a picture for Scattered Spider or for Ransom Hub here? It's kind of weird. 2024 came out in early 2024, exploded on the scene. They're responsible for 254 reported incidents by Q1. They're growing very, 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 very quickly. They did have some issues, so they may slow down a little bit here. Just last month, there were some issues with potential payment problems and things with the affiliates. Now, what's happened a couple times in these groups is they've gotten the ball rolling. They get a bunch of affiliates together. The affiliates go out, they do the attacks, they pull the money, and then the group disbands with all of the affiliates' money. Okay, what's that? Yep, it's a rug pull, exactly, which is awesome and makes me laugh. But there's been some issues here with Ransom Hub where they may slow down a little bit. It hasn't been a real rug pull, but there's been some problems and some issues within there. It's funny that these groups, we have to remember are just humans. So things get in there and there's actually internal politics, which I think is pretty funny that some of these things happen. When we had the issue with the Ukraine and Russian thing going on, that split some of these groups because they were split between the two of them. And this is how some of the code got leaked, et cetera, on some of them. Now, Lockbit's been around like forever. How many of you remember Lockbit from like the early days, right? If Lockbit were a person, it'd be using a walker with the little tennis balls on it. All right, it's been around for a long time right now, but they're up to 4. So they got hit last year with law enforcement, and I thought maybe that was going to take them down a little bit more than they were, but it hardly slowed them down. They did take a bit of a hit, but they're jumping on there. They're using PowerShell scripts, extracting and deploying DLLs, okay? They're doing a lot of living off the land tactics. If you're familiar with that, that's using integrated tools that are already part of the OS, so they're downloading and pulling in very little that can be spotted through that side of things. And yeah, they've been around for a long time. It'll be interesting to see how this continues, even with some of the stuff last year. Akira, yeah, suspiciously close to the code from Conti when it got leaked, okay? There's never been anything really saying this is this group reformed, but that's what happens a lot of times. Law enforcement comes in, they kick a few people down, they re-spin up under a new name. Maybe they didn't like their last logo or something, I don't know. But they focused for a while on data theft. And we saw some of that, which was interesting, they still called it ransomware, where they weren't actually bothering with the encryption routines. Okay, so it was a matter of data theft and then extortion not to dump the data, all right? They're starting to do the encryption piece again. But throughout the years, we got better at defending against this through good backups, right? It kind of forced us to do good backups, and so they were being able to recover from the encryption piece a whole lot easier. So some of them stopped doing that. Interesting to see what's going to happen here. Their platform is really cool. It has a built-in chat function allowing direct negotiation through the chat programs. And it reminds me of Spora in the early days. Do any of you remember Spora? Okay, this was one of my favorite strains back in the day. The UI was beautiful. Had a little chat on the side. You could talk with the people live. Like, it was really nice. And I'm like, I really wish you all would do good things with this. There's been some interesting strains. Popcorn Time, anyone hear of that? So Popcorn Time, if you get hit with Popcorn Time, they give you a code, and if you infect 2 other people, you get your data back free. It's like a multi-level marketing scheme, okay? It's like, yeah, driving around little pink cars and stuff like Mary Kay or something. But I mean, they have tried all kinds of interesting things to do that. And frankly, the tech support is phenomenal from these groups. It really is. Like, they are really good at this because they have a reputation. If people pay the ransom and never get their data back, they're going to stop paying the ransom. Now, there are groups that have they've rug pulled. And what a lot of people don't talk about is, and I would be interested in hearing some of y'all's experience with this, having dealt with it, but most people don't get all of their data back. Some of it's corrupted or something's wrong with it, so they end up getting a bulk of it back, and if you're lucky, it's the important stuff.
I remember reading that sometimes you need to use the FBI tools or the Fed's tools to recover the data.
Yeah, using the Fed's tools to recover data.
They work better than the decryptors.
Than the decryptors, yeah. I mean, so what happens is they're encrypting quickly. That's the idea, is we're encrypting very quickly to get that stuff in there, and things go wrong. Right? We've all had file corruption happen. And so a lot of times they don't get everything back when it's done with that. That's a problem for them reputationally, but a lot of them, they try to work through that quite a bit. But yeah, there were some very interesting strains throughout the years that tried some very interesting marketing techniques. There's one out there, gosh, I can't remember the name of it, Philadelphia. Philadelphia was a RAS sort of thing. There's still a YouTube video out there if you look it up, Philadelphia Ransomware, and it's a video talking about all the cool things of their ransomware platform. Okay, it's marketing, which is crazy. So Scattered Spider, of course. Now this is an interesting one. Primarily composed of English-speaking members in the US and UK. They're doing a lot of vishing, voice phishing, because they don't have a different accent, okay? How many of you, if a Brit calls, you trust them immediately, right? You're like, first of all, you're gonna be funny, and you're gonna drink tea with your pinky out because you're proper, because you're British, right? There's like a level of trust. My best friend is British. He lives in London. But there's some of that. That's one of the reasons why they're being so good is they're actually using vishing as an attack vector. They were behind MGM Resort and Caesars. You all remember that one, right? There was a lot of money lost in that. And Marks and Spencer recently. So they're still around, they're still happening. It's a very loosely connected group. It's, they're not like a really tight-knit gang, which is why 4 people in the US plus a Scottish guy got arrested and really hasn't messed with them much. They're just not that tight-knit of group. So it's a very interesting group, but this is like the number 4 right now on the list of what's going on. So the aftermath of attacks, Marks and Spencer just happened. They lost 650 million pounds of market value over that attack. I mean, holy crap. Change Healthcare, overall the revenue losses for the doctors and stuff that use them for the processing was about $100 million a day, and the British Library, which was down forever, cost about 6 or 7 million pounds, about 40% of their financial reserves just to get it back. So there's brutal stuff happening out there. Your customers, when they get hit with this, it can be an organization limiting event. It can be a terminating event for a company. The money is just, it's so much in the recovery of it. So attack vectors. Number 1 is phishing. Is that shocking to anybody? Right? It's not shocking to me, sadly. Look at the clock. Okay, so when it comes to falling for phishes, malware downloads are a big one, but also credential theft. A lot of times we think of phishing as trying to, get malware on the systems, but a lot of times they're going after credential theft with the fake login pages, especially for things like VPN credentials and remote access credentials like that. Malware-infected software downloads, there's been a couple of them rolling around lately that are like game cracks, right? Has anyone in here ever cracked a game? Right? Yeah, okay, yeah. You always feel kind of shady hitting the AXE on that one. You're like, oh God, this could go horribly bad. Not that I've really ever done it. This isn't recorded, right? And then bad credentials. So credential stuffing is the process of taking a known good username and password, sticking it in some software, and it just goes out and automatically tries to log into all the credit cards and the banks and all that kind of stuff with a known good pair. Automated tools for that. So every time there's a breach, they get all the passwords and they get all the credentials. Well, they just do that and they're very effective. Why? Because we're people and we're dumb and we reuse passwords. Okay. The other part is password spraying, which is using like a username, usually an email address, and all of those really easy passwords, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, QWERTY, all that kind of stuff. Okay. That's password spraying. And unfortunately, that's a way they're taking over accounts and stuff quite a bit. Number 2 is remote access. Who here loves RDP? No, I wasn't raising my hand, I fooled you. I hate it. I think RDP is evil. You'll see the first line right there, RDP is evil. VPNs can be good. RDP behind VPNs is reasonable. Okay, well, we can talk about that. Y'all remember SamSam? That was one of the original groups, early on groups. Man, they were hitting RDP sessions like crazy. And of course, people thought they were clever. They're like, hey, I'm not going to put RDP on 3389. I'm going to move it to 3390. Right? Nobody will find it there. Yeah, guess what? Didn't help too much. So there are some things you need to do. And the big failure points with this are not using MFA weak credentials, you might see a pattern here, not using MFA, reuse credentials, not using MFA, and not geo-blocking or not using MFA. I like MFA, especially in a remote access thing like this. It is not 100%. It is not a cure for everything. There are better versions of MFA than other kinds. Don't get me wrong. But whenever you're securing something like this, you really need to have MFA enabled. Number 3, unpatched software. See, his shirt and stuff aren't patched. That was clever, right? Man, I was having fun with ChatGPT on this. I'm like, all right, make a goose with this, right? You'll see pretty soon it stops being stickers. I don't know when that happened. I looked up and I was like, crap, I'm like 8 geese into this and no longer stickers. But okay, unpatched software, big problem. Everybody loves patching, right? Yay? Yeah. Yeah. Here's the problem with it is we are sometimes extra critical about that, about people not patching software, but there are definitely times when you can't patch the software, okay? Any of you work with medical facilities and groups like that, right? There's the MRI machine that gives the most fantastic images that every surgeon and doctor wants to see, and it still runs Windows 95. Nobody's going to spend for a new MRI machine that's doing a kick-ass job just because it runs Windows 95. You are not going to be able to patch that machine. So what do? You have to mitigate it. You have to isolate it. You have to do something along those lines.
Is unpatched software very important for internal software, as important as externally facing software?
I think it's just as important internally as it is externally. Now, externally will kick the door in, but once the bad actors get in, they exploit the hell out of your vulnerable software to... What's that?
What could they do with the vulnerable software? They get into the Windows 95,
Yeah.
what do they have from that machine?
So what they can do is they can elevate privileges, they can move around different ways under the radar. I mean, once you elevate privileges and you take advantage of these different things, like what was it, the Move It stuff? They were getting in and then they were exploiting Move It from the outside or from the inside a lot of times. So it's very dangerous internally. So you really want to keep an eye on that too. There is, like I said, a lot of software that's old and works. Some orgs don't know what's on the network. How many of you have taken over a company and then they're like, oh, well, we have 200 assets. And then there's 400 because they didn't count all the other crap that's on there, right? All the TVs in the rooms and things like that, okay? Those are terrible out there. Remote equipment can have vulnerabilities. In other words, they VPN in, but their box is not good. What was the one I were talking about today? I heard somebody talking about it with LastPass, I think it was. There was a vulnerable version of Plex Media Server on the machine that they... Why? Why would you ever have that on a machine that you're VPNing into an organization with, right? So one of the things that we have issues with is how our boundaries have moved with VPNs. And we don't know what's on the other side. Maybe little Johnny's downloading the game cracks on the laptop you also use for work. That's a big problem. And then people are afraid to patch. I'm sure no one will raise their hand in here. Who's had patches go wrong? Oh, really? Really? I'm shocked. Really shocked by that, okay? If you didn't raise your hand, you're not paying attention anymore. You've zoned out, all right? Because it's gone horribly for at least a few of us. And so we don't like doing that. So honestly, we'll try to kick the can down the road a little bit longer, but we got to tackle that pretty big. So that's like the top 3 things that cause ransomware attacks to be successful. Now, putting it together. He's in there because I said tackling the phishing issue is important, right? So putting this stuff together as an MSP, you have a duty to provide the best protection for the money. If y'all have a customer that's like, money is no concern, bless you, you should probably not be here. You should let people take care of that and retire to an island in the Caribbean. Because damn, you got a good one there, all right? But we got to tackle these issues. We got to tackle the credential issues. This is the kind of stuff where we put it together to go after the top things that are going to give them the best bang for the buck. There's a book that one of my colleagues wrote, and if you ever tell him I suggested it, I will deny it emphatically. Again, I hope we're not being recorded. But it's called A Data-Driven Computer Defense. It's by Roger Grimes. And the way he looks at it is when you look at an organization, you need to look at the data from that organization to look at where your biggest vulnerabilities are. So, when it comes to patching, if you have a shop that runs 2 machines that run Java and 100 machines that run some other software and there's a vulnerability in both, you go, oh my God, the internet, the Twitter says that this Java thing's a big deal. No, you're going to go for the bigger ones. It's just a matter of using data like that. AI. You guys have heard of that, right? I'm actually surprised I haven't seen that many AI talks here at the conference so far, but AI is kind of out there. It's changing our world very rapidly. Business and personal lives, but it's also helping the bad actors. What I think AI is doing best for bad actors has more to do with efficiency than actually making things tougher for people to spot, for example. Okay, and I say this a little bit tongue in cheek, but deepfakes are a huge deal right now. We're talking a lot about deepfakes. I see that a lot, but ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think deepfakes are our biggest problem. I think the efficiencies that are happening due to AI being in the game is our biggest problem, because we no longer have one person doing a voice phishing call at a time. We now have AIs doing 100 of them at a time. It's also making it a lot easier to put together pretexts on people, which is kind of an idea behind what the scam's going to be. Okay, it can pull data from other breaches and information. For example, Ticketmaster breach, 500 million people, right? Just a couple of folks. If I go in there and I go, okay, let's look at this. You were at the Taylor Swift concert on this day in this row in this seat. We're having a pop-up surprise concert that hasn't been released yet, but because you were there, you can get dibs on tickets before they go on sale, or we tell anyone publicly, right? How enticing is that going to be for somebody that's a Taylor Swift fan, right? Because they sell out in seconds, and so, man, great way to scam people with information like that. The AI stuff can put those sorts of things together. How many of you have had a medical procedure recently? Here in the US, it's a horrible thing to have done, not only because it hurts and it's all of that, but for like months, you get these things in the mail or emails that go, I was the lab technician that took the vial of blood and carried it from the phlebotomist to the table here. I'm not under your insurance and therefore you owe me $200, right? If you've had that happen, they happen all the time. If I know that you've been in a procedure, man, I'm sending you stuff like that, getting you to pay bills that don't exist. And half the time, you won't even realize you've been scammed. The information and data that's out there is worth a lot. The metadata is worth a lot when it comes to AI. Now, Hollywood has us trained to think that AI has a potential for creating murderous, human-hating machines. Now, this is mostly false, but it is entertaining. I mean, the T-800 here just wants to get along. I thought that was pretty clever. Okay, I actually got it to put up yeah. Okay, anyways. But you kind of get the idea. We have this thing in our mind about AI. Thing is, AI, there's several different flavors of AI. Gen AI has been all the rage for a while, obviously. The LLMs also. And then what I'm seeing more and more happening is agentic AI. And agentic AI, I think, is very interesting. Do y'all know what agentic AI is? Okay, so the difference with agentic AI is you say, I want you to do this. And agentic AI will go out and it will work on its own autonomously to come up with what you needed at the end. Where like ChatGPT, you have to say, okay, now do this, or now I have a question about this. Like there's so much human interaction. With agentic AI, you say, go out, get some news stories, summarize them, put them in a 280 character social media post, let me know when you're done. And it will go do things. We're going to see a lot more of that kind of stuff happening here.
Is that the same as AGI, Artificial General Intelligence?
No, those are different. There's different levels of, so general intelligence, we're not there. I don't think we will be in our lifetime.
Yeah.
So,
Deep mind, right? Are they the ones trying for that?
yeah, we're not there. Anyways, that's a whole different AI talk. Okay. Now, what I've seen happen with this is a mixture of these that are pretty cool. Any of you heard of DEF CON in Vegas, right? DEF CON? All right, so one of my buddies, Perry Carpenter, he did a thing at the Social Engineering Village where they get a bunch of people up in front of people in a soundproof booth, and they actually do live phishing calls and get points for information they can get from folks, like if you were an attacker. Okay, so they're going to find out what OS they run and all this kind of stuff, okay? So they had a competition of human versus AI. Well, the humans got up there, they made the calls, et cetera, et cetera. Perry and his partner got in there, and he used 100% AI to run the calls. So he used an AI chatbot for the back end. That funneled back to either Claude or ChatGPT, depending on what he wanted to use. And then the output was fed through 11 labs to generate the voice. And all of this stuff was done completely. He hit go and sat back. Now, he tested it with me a couple times before, so I knew it was AI calling me. And I got to tell you, a lot of the times I couldn't tell. And we would have conversations. It's like, oh, you know what version of Internet Explorer do you use? Or what browser do you use? And I was like, oh, Internet Explorer. Oh, okay, what version? Oh, I use version 16. And it's like, something's wrong there. It didn't go up to version 16. So let's go up to the 3 icons on the top here. And it's a voice talking to me. It was mind-blowing. And even better yet, some of the other things that he did was to make sure that people didn't freak out if it did glitch a little. He'd start off and say, hey, this is so-and-so, the new chatbot from Hilton. We're here to look into some things. We're a new experimental thing. Don't mind me if something goes a little funny. And the people are already mentally trained to expect some issues to potentially happen. But we've all heard about AI, so what do? We jump on it. Well, this is all being done real time, and he could have done it 100 times at once. It cost about 30 cents a minute for him to do one of these calls. Now, technically, the AI lost the challenge because they say they didn't get enough points with enough flags or the higher end flags, but everyone in the room was kind of like shocked. This is where we're working these things together. The Gen AI, like 11 labs for the audio, the LLMs in the back end. It's amazing, folks. So we're going to have problems with this, and it's going to be continuing to drive not only with ransomware infections, but also other malware infections and your typical scams, business email compromise type stuff. And I believe it's going to start happening sooner than later on individuals as well. They've started working, there's one of the phishing as a service groups, and I can't remember the name of it right now, I'm sorry. But they've started offering AI capabilities within their phishing as a service platform. So they're using AI to do translations, which it's very good at. So what's cool about it is I can say, not only I would like this to be translated to German, but I can also say I want this translated to Bavarian German if I know that person is in that region, and it's good. It's really good. So we're gonna see more and more of this stuff going on. Again, I think it's efficiency that's gonna help us. So defense, we can hide or retire. And this is my plan, because I'm old. I was thinking about, if I can make enough, I'll buy that tiny island in the Caribbean and just go out there and be gone. I do have a couple of acres. I'm actually from just a little bit north of Tampa here. I'm thinking about digging a moat around it, shunning humanity, and just being a hermit. It's probably not something that's really realistic, although it's really fun to think about. What we do need to do is layer our defenses. Okay, we can't just rely on email filters or HDR or EDR or like DLP, or I'm sorry, HRM. Does anyone know what HRM is? Have you heard that one yet? Okay, human risk management. So all of the people stuff. We can't just rely on all these things. We have to kind of put them in a row here. Okay, we do have to deal with the human problem, number one attack vector. I just like the guy with the glasses. I don't even know what that was from. This is where you're doing the phishing. This is where you're doing all the things, the education, getting people involved in it. This is definitely a big thing. If you know anyone that's looking for a human risk management, oh, I spelled that wrong. I do know of a good one. Okay, that's all you get from me for that. EDR, endpoint detection and response, you have to have that. That's got to be good. And you want to look for something that has some anti-ransomware capabilities. I've seen some cool stuff that can look at machines. AI is very good at looking at anomalous behavior. So if Bob in accounting doesn't do any encryption for weeks and then all of a sudden starts encrypting files like crazy, hey, wait, something might be wrong. Maybe we should stop this, service or something like that, or process. So some of that stuff's doing actually really cool stuff right there. But they also need to understand whether things have been enabled. I've worked at places or gone into places where they've had I'll say Symantec for a long time, and new features were released and they weren't enabled. But they just assumed because they came out that, oh, cool, we're doing this now. But nobody went in and checked the boxes, right? Anyone seen that kind of stuff happen? There's a lot of shelfware out there that has a lot of stuff that it can do that's not being done. So we need to make sure that's happening. We need to make sure the updates are actually happening with these. That's quite important as well. You need an IR plan. Incident response and business continuity plans are incredibly important. Test them. Tabletops are fine. Keep them updated. Here's an important one. Print a copy and make sure it has contact information for everyone involved, including legal, law enforcement, executives, and key players. Okay, a lot of times people get into problems and their incident response plan is also encrypted. Okay, there was a Facebook outage not too long ago. They pushed something to, I think it was a BGP push, and it took them offline. They went, okay, we need to fix that. Well, their tools were online and they weren't online anymore. So they were like, okay, we're gonna have to go down to the data center and do this by hand. So they got people together, they went down to the data center, went to go getting in, the badges didn't work because, hey, it's an online system. So then they're like, okay, we need to call security who has a key to come open the door so we can go in and re-push this BGP thing out. However, they didn't have a call list because it was all digital, okay? So what could have been a very quick fix ended up spiraling into bad things because one thing was failing after another. You need to make sure of that when it comes to ransomware, okay? Print that copy. It's got to know who to contact and when based on different scenarios. Because if it's just an encryption event, you may contact different people at different times. So when I talk about different people, I'm talking about law enforcement, I'm talking about legal, I'm talking about executives, and maybe even have to brief the board. You want to know when that's happening. You don't want to be figuring this out on the run. That's for sure. So your customers, you want to make sure they have this stuff in place and everybody's talked about that and agreed upon these things. Y'all should be the first ones they call, frankly. But legal and stuff is where we get into things. Backups, you need to test them, right? Everyone here loves backups, I know that. Has to be an immutable copy somewhere. But also, make sure if you're backing up to the cloud or your customer's backing up to the cloud, when you're trying to restore a whole bunch of machines at once, make sure you're taking into account the size of the pipe and the restoration time with that. Don't restore all the workstations and start on the servers, right? Because, yeah, it doesn't work well. Bring in the pros. I love this picture. I've seen this so many times. Yeah. Here's the thing. Y'all are good. You're smart. But you don't do this every single day. There are teams out there that are dealing with these. They know the IOCs, they know the tactics, techniques, they know how they do the backdoors and all that. Don't just say, I'm gonna do this, okay? Get guidance. Don't be afraid to reach out and get help. One thing to remember is insurance carriers may have IR teams on retainer, and if you don't use an approved IR team, you may lose some coverage, especially in the event of reinfection. Okay, because they're going to have their people they trust to make sure that they don't get in. There was a group in the UK, got hit, paid a $2.4 million ransom. They restored everything. They were fat, dumb, and happy, and 30 days later, they hadn't removed them. They just hit go again and ended up paying another 2.4 million pounds in ransom, okay? You got to get them out of there. So you need people that specialize in this. The nice thing is you can always blame them too if there's a reinfection. You're like, hey, it was your IR team. I don't know, man. They told us to stay out of it. Meet your law enforcement now. Anyone see this movie? I love this movie, Hot Fuzz. There is a goose in Hot Fuzz. It's a hilarious movie. Anyways, don't wait till the world's on fire to meet your law enforcement, especially groups like you that are MSPs. Have contact with the local law enforcement and the federal in your area before anything goes down. It's not that you're going to necessarily go straight to them, but you don't want to be navigating a phone tree and figuring out who the hell you're supposed to talk to when it's going down. Geo-block, remote access, and MFA it. You've heard my thoughts on MFA, but geo-block it. If you don't have Russian customers, why would you let Russian people or people from Russia log into your stuff? Now, it's not going to fix everything. Sure, they can bounce, but it's another measure that can make you just that little bit harder to go after. Monitor the hell out of things, and maybe lock it down to only having access during certain hours. I know it's sort of basics, but it's stuff that I see a lot of organizations forget to do and have being done in their playbook. Don't panic. I love it. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. He's got a towel, folks. Come on, come on. Don't panic when it goes wrong. Okay, you're not the only one there either, and this is something that I find a lot of people trip up on, is you're like, I'm the technical guy, this is my network that's been attacked, and they try to take on all the stuff themselves. You have executives that are running the business that have their own risk and things there. Let them make some of the calls. Let them handle some of the stuff. It's not all on you, but I see people bury themselves in this. The C-suite is who you want telling you when to contact legal and law enforcement. You don't want to make that call because they may have different things in mind. And don't let it hit your ego if they're not agreeing with you. Because ultimately, this is something that we as technical people sometimes fail at. The business leaders are the business leaders. We're there to enable them. So if they make the choice, okay, all right, cool. You want to have regular briefings. Don't make assumptions without clearly telling everybody in the room, this is an assumption. You want it in writing, in triplicate, and hopefully somebody recording. Because if you make assumptions, it can bite you in the butt hard. And I'll tell you a real quick story about that. When I was with the Army, we had an issue happen on the secret side with one of our machines that looked like it had been compromised, and then they blew it away on the way out the door. We were like, oh shit, like this is a bad thing. It was a password generating machine for the classified side with a lot of our high-end, high-level stuff. Well, we started looking at it, and I'm briefing the generals, stuff like that, and I told him, I said, this is what it appears to be at this time, but we're still looking at it. And I continued that. This is what we found in the logs. It appears that it's this, however, we're still looking into it. Turns out it was a patch that went wrong, believe it or not, and it continued to try to uninstall itself and kept going down directory trees until it basically ate the whole machine. But I had to go back and go, sir, turns out it wasn't an adversary. I mean, that's a good thing, but if I'd have just been going, we got attacked, this would have been a different world. So make sure when you're talking about stuff, if you're making assumptions, everybody knows. Also, this is, I felt a little dirty putting this in here, but I don't. It's not a pitch. I've helped write several revisions on this. This is a ransomware hostage rescue guide. I actually really, really love this. It's got some checklists in there that I help do, like talking about when to contact who and certain things to check out. I really, really like this. And that's why I'm kind of promoting it here. It's free other than giving our marketing department your SOL and contact information. Like, there's nothing I can do about that, okay? But I do really think it's a good document to keep around just for ideas and stuff too. So that's pretty much it. I know it's, well, I'm a minute over, so I apologize. I know I'm between you and beer. I'm happy to chat with anyone afterwards. Thank you so much for being here, and I really appreciate it, everybody. Have a great show, and I'll see you around tomorrow. Thank you.